Man, what a great day. It's a good day. Hey guys, today for me is Monday, I think. You're probably watching this on Tuesday, or maybe a little later. Whenever you get to it. It's all good. Today we're going over John chapter 13. The song I had in my head today is God's Not Done With You by Tauren Wells. I think sometimes we can feel like that, where maybe just like, God, I feel like, I'm used up. Maybe you get thoughts of like, I'm worthless, all this, that, all that junk. And God's not done with you, not by a long shot. Even if you're 80, 90 plus years old, God ain't done with you. Otherwise, hey, you wouldn't be here. So just realize God's not done with you. He's still working things out. He's got a plan for you. So good song. All right, John chapter 13. Almost said 14. John chapter 13. So Pastor KJ's favorite chapter in the entire Bible, where Jesus washes his disciples' feet. He just loves it. I know he does. Here we go. Verse 1. There's just a cool little sentence in here. I'll just read the whole thing. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Right? He's about to get crucified, died, resurrected, and then after 40 days he goes up to the Father, and there he is till Judgment Day, and then he's going to come on back. So then after that, still in verse 1, he says, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. It just warms my little heart and my soul. It's good stuff. He loved them to the end. I love that. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So that's just kind of one thing that's cool right there. Is just like, he has all this power, right? He has all this power. He knew that the Father had put all things under his power. All things, not some things, not a little bit of this here, a little of that. All things under his power. And he had the power right there to stop Judas and make him snap out of it and make the devil flee and not go through any of this. But he did not enact that power, right? Just kind of, he was returning to his Father. He was about to return to his Father. So he kind of like knows, okay, this is I know, like, honestly, within hours, I'm going to get, betrayed, and then have this, be arrested, have this mock trial, be beaten, and then, within another couple of hours, be crucified and died. It's like, within 24, 48, 36 hours, somewhere in there. So he's like, hey, this literally is like my last chance to leave a lasting impression on my disciples, on my apostles. Hey, after I'm gone, they get the Holy Spirit, but it's up to them. It's up to them. If they want this thing to keep on moving, they got to do the work. So, and again, of course, that also gets passed on to us as well. Yeah, just good stuff there. So, and with also what's cool with that is just after, this is one thing you kind of only see in John, because normally in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's like, okay, there's the Last Supper, Jesus, washing the disciples' feet, they get the Last Supper, and then he gets betrayed, and then boom, right into it. But actually, what's pretty cool with John is there's this chapter where, he predicts Peter's denial, but then there's 4 chapters. Yep, 4 chapters of Jesus, also just the vine and the branches, which if you've never read John chapter 15, oh man, get ready for a good one. John chapter 15 is good. I'm excited for that one. Jesus calling himself the vine, says, I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. Anyway, that's not tonight. That's in a little bit. But anyway, Jesus knows, like, hey, I've only got like a couple more hours with these guys. Like, let's make this count, right? I'm going to make this memorable. This is going to be a great thing right here. So, right there. So number 4, all things are under his power. He'd come from God. He's returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. And then after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. So, and I wrote this in my Bible. I can't remember where I heard this from or where, but I wrote it down. And we're basically, when he says, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, meaning he took off his rabbi clothes, his teacher clothes, his, I don't know if he had like a particular symbol of authority. Jesus wasn't like the flashy type of guy at all, from what we read. And then So he takes off his rabbi clothes and then puts on the identity of a servant, a towel in which to clean people's feet. So like another way to think that is like, imagine, Jesus is the king of the universe, the king of the world, right? So imagine like any normal king, he's got this big fancy crown with like crown jewels on it, and he's got this big huge fancy robe, and then he's got a big scepter and like some nice shoes and some tights or whatever, depending on what era he's in. And he takes off his crown, takes off his his robe, sets down his scepter, and then puts on the towel to wash people's feet. Or let's say he grabs a plunger, right, or a toilet brush, and then the squeezy bottle to clean the toilets, or puts on like his tool belt to go fix something. Hey, shoot, the septic tank is backed up. Hey guys, don't worry, I got this one. I'm gonna take care of it. I know it's kind of a stinky job, but I got this. That's basically what he does. He takes off his outer clothing and he takes off his rabbi clothes. And he even says later in the chapter, "You called me Lord and teacher, and rightly so." But he takes off that identity and then puts on the identity of a servant, which is just cool. So then he goes around washing everybody's feet. And then, of course, Simon Peter, you gotta love Simon, going from 0 to 100, all like that. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" He's like, "You wash everybody else's, but you're going to wash my feet?" And then Jesus says, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand." He says, "No," of course, Peter. "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Sure. And then Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Oh, well then, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. So it goes from just 0, no way, to 100. 0 to 100, that's just kind of like Simon Peter's nature. It's funny. And so, Jesus goes to explain, "You don't need a whole bath, Peter. Just relax, calm down." So then going on from there, so 14. "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." And so from that, I don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but I always kind of wonder I wonder if they did that, if they had washing feet parties, hey, I got this. Or maybe when they have everybody gathered for church in the house, maybe they have one of the apostles show up and actually wash people's feet at the front. That'd be kind of cool. I wonder if they did that. Maybe Keisha should wash all of our feet. That'd be interesting. Anyway, but basically kind of what I get that is whether they washed each other's feet literally or not, it was serve one another. I want you to serve one another. Right? And so it's basically just don't, in general, don't be afraid of the dirty jobs. Don't be afraid of the lowly jobs. I love the people that show up on Saturdays to clean the church. And I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever, except for a little bit here and there, I don't think I've ever cleaned the church. But just it's just so cool to just have people like that. And so that's just whenever there's a little jobs to do, it's always good just to volunteer for little stuff, especially things that maybe people may not want to do. Also, just here's one thing that it's kind of funny, just because we read this just last night for our little family devotion. We got this book of little cards. The Ted Cunningham show when he came, and so I bought these from Ted Cunningham. But here's it, if you can see it. There's these cards. It's goes to the whole alphabet. This is for X, and so this is this one stands for ox, and so this is basically dirty work. It says Proverbs 14:4. "Without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest." So basically, hey, if you don't have an ox, hey, yeah, your barn is going to stay clean, but then again, what do you want? Do you want a clean barn with no ox in it? Or hey, if you got an ox, hey, you can have a great big harvest. So basically, hey, if you want to have a great big harvest, you got to be willing to do some dirty work and maybe clean up some messes every once in a while. So that's just really good stuff. 18. So he says, "I'm not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen, but this is to fulfill the passage of Scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me." So that's verse 18. And of course, what Jesus is quoting is actually Psalm 41:9. My Bible has a little note with that, so I didn't know that off the top of my hand, but top of my head. That's also one thing when you're reading your Bible, you can also look at the bottom and see if there's an A in there or a D or a C. It's oh, maybe there's a reference to something. Yeah, so anyway, so a little reference to Psalm 41:9, where it says, "Even my close friend, someone I trusted," and remember that, even my close friend, someone I trusted, one who shared my bread, has turned against me. And so that's where Jesus is just saying, like, hey, it's like this has been long foretold throughout the scriptures that, hey, somebody who, like, one of my close friends is actually going to betray me. And so 19 and 20 real quick, and then we'll actually go back to that. It says, I am telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you'll believe that I am who I am. Right? It's like, guys, believe in me. Very truly I tell you. And this is just something that's so cool that to me, this little verse 20 just tells me, hey, Jesus has your back. Right? Jesus has your back. It says, very truly I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me. And whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. So with that, Jesus is basically saying, like, hey, you're my representative. Like back in the day, if, like, the king sent a messenger and, they mistreated the messenger, or they killed the messenger even that was like a direct, like, hey, king, we wish we were doing this to you. Right? So basically what that is Jesus says, hey, I'm sending you guys out, and if somebody accepts you, then they accept me. And whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me, which is God the Father. So that's just kind of one cool thing, is just realize, hey, we are God's messengers. We are God's representatives. If you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, and you profess to your lips that Jesus is King, then hey, you are God's representative. You might want to act like it. So, verse 21, and this is one thing that's kind of cool that honestly I've skipped over, breezed over so many times where it didn't quite click. So that's why it's good to go through it again and again. Verse 21, after he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. So Jesus is troubled in spirit. Like, just imagine a time where you've been troubled in your spirit. Maybe you've had, the death of a loved one. Imagine Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus, right, where he was just Jesus who wept. He was troubled in spirit. It's, if you've had hopefully you haven't, but if you've ever had something tragic happen to you or, to one of your family members, ask if your parents or whoever's passed on, ask them, hey, when your parents did pass away, what was that like? What did that feel like? And you can kind of like, they get troubled in spirit. I even talked to my mom one time, her mom passed away, I think, before I was even born. And so, but she still gets a little bit sad when she talks about her mom, so it's like she's kind of troubled in spirit. So Jesus here, after saying this, is troubled in spirit, testifying, truly, one of you is going to betray me. And I always kind of pictured, well, it's Judas the betrayer, and I always pictured Jesus, saying, Judas, you're going to betray the Son of Man with a kiss? And it's kind of like, bro, what's wrong with you, man? But if you go back to Psalm 41:9, he says, even my close friend, someone I trusted. Remember, Jesus' ministry was about 3 years long. So it's not like, they met last week and then he betrayed him the next week. It's like for 3 long years they've had this great, this great friendship. They hung out together. They did miracles together. Judas was one of those ones that was sent out with the 72 that was healing people, that was casting out demons. He was right there with it. But now he's going to betray Jesus. So because of that 3 year long close friendship, and it could have been any one of them, to be honest, right? Even Pastor Trey's message at Walk Church was just saying, it was basically Peter and Judas had the exact same sin. They both betrayed Jesus, and honestly they all did, because they all ran away, they all left, they all deserted him. But the only difference was, and it's just such a great point by Pastor Trey, I'm going to steal it over and over and over again, is Peter turned back to Jesus, whereas Judas went in isolation. Don't go in isolation. Go back to Jesus like Peter did. So, hammer that point down. 20. Where am I at? There we go. 23. So there you go. So then his disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which one of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, John's like, oh, that's me, by the way. I'm so humble. I love that. John, if you don't know that, in the book of John, John refers to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. I just think that's hilarious. There you go. Was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and asked him which ones he mean. Ask him which one. Hey, John, who's he talking about? Which is kind of funny, because the disciple whom Jesus loved, be sure to mention that, hey, Simon Peter asked me. the disciple whom Jesus loves, meaning it wasn't Simon Peter. He wasn't the one Jesus loved. But it's just kind of cool. So, going forward. So, Jesus says, hey, the one who I give this this bread to, he's the one who's going to betray me. And then as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. So remember before, in verse 2, Satan had already prompted him. And if you look in other of the other Gospels, kind of even says that, Judas before this, went to the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and they said they gave him 30 pieces of silver coins. And then, he said, okay, I'll arrange a sign, to let you know which one is Jesus. And he does betray Jesus with a kiss. He goes up and with the soldiers behind him, gives him a kiss, and then boom, there you go. It's just like, it's heartbreaking. So, going forward from there, verse 34 and 35, just so good, solid here. Jesus says, a new command I give you. Not a suggestion, by the way. A new command I give you. Like, do this. Like when your parents give you a command like, do this, do it. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. That's just so beautiful. I'm just going to say it again. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. By the way, if you've ever forgotten to love one another, people might look at you and kind of wonder like, that person says they're a Christian, but I wonder, he doesn't really love his fellow Christian there. I wonder is there something missing? Maybe I got the, whatever. Maybe I read that verse wrong. So, anyway, just having a little fun here, guys. Again, guilty. Guilty. I have not always loved my fellow Christian or my fellow man or my fellow anybody at times. So, just an FYI. So 36, skipping on to that, Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? And this is also another thing that I missed reading this many times. Jesus replied, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Basically saying, hey, where I'm going right now to the cross and be crucified and to die, you can't follow now, but you will follow later. And church history tells us that Peter was crucified, but he didn't want to be crucified in the same way that Jesus was, because he didn't think that was like an honor. So they actually crucified him upside down, which sounds awful. Well, all of it, the whole thing, all of it sounds terribly awful. But upside down really does not sound even good at all, ever. So anyway, Peter asked, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. And I'm sure, and I think all the other disciples in the other Gospels say, yeah, us too, yeah. And he says, then Jesus answered, will you really? Huh? Peter, will you really? And he probably didn't say with that kind of an attitude. I just kind of say with that kind of attitude. I'm almost sure Jesus didn't. Will you really? Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. It's kind of like if you listen to Pastor Billy's sermon this past Sunday. He talked about, I'm forgetting, but, sorry, I had to look it up on my phone there real quick. I'm like, wait, what did he say? No, but it's basically that point in the Bible where, I think like all the crowds were leaving Jesus because he said something crazy, and they're like, this guy's nuts. And then Jesus asked them, well, who do you guys say I am? And Jesus basically says, hey, you're the Messiah, you're the Christ, you're the Son of God, you're the long foretold, the Messiah to come. And then he says, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because this was revealed to you not by men, but by my Father in heaven. And then basically right after that, Jesus kind of tells them, like, all right, so hey, just so you guys know, I'm gonna be betrayed, I'm gonna be beaten, crucified, died, but then I'm gonna come back to life. Don't you worry. And then Jesus, Peter takes him aside. Jesus, no, he rebukes him, says, no, Lord, you're not supposed to do that. No, don't you know how this is supposed to go? And Jesus is like, bro, I do know how it's supposed to go. And he says, get behind me, Satan. It's kind of like the same thing right there, where it's just like, Peter's so good, 0 to 100, and he's just back and forth. So, but of course, I think you can by reading the scriptures, and of course you kind of know church history, and especially in the book of Acts, where hey, Peter just does some amazingly miraculous things. He kind of puts that up and down behind him, and goes on to do amazing things. So don't worry, if you're one of those up and down people, don't you worry. God's working all things for your good and for his good. So Love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.